Welcome back to Gibby's World of Tech. Today it's episode 3, the AIO and the fan installation on the Hyte Y60 build. Now, as you know, CPUs, GPUs, even your RAM, they put off heat. That comes with performance. There is a trade-off. And you have to do something with all that heat, and you have a lot of options. You can go with a straight air-cooled system, or you can have a hybrid system, or you can have a custom water loop, or an open loop as it's called. I'm going to go with more of a hybrid setup. And so today what I'm going to be doing is installing a 360mm AIO for the CPU. And I'm also going to be changing out the stock case fans for the fans that I chose to use for this build. Now, I'm going to show you the components I'm going to use, but before I do, I need to give you a word of caution. When you start changing parts that come with other parts, you kind of open the doorway for some trouble. And what I mean by trouble is some software does not play well with some components. Most motherboards have some kind of RGB software, but it doesn't necessarily communicate well with components that have their own hub. That's kind of the situation I'm in with this, and I did that on purpose because one, I really like the aesthetics of what I've chosen, and number two, I wanted to be able to demonstrate that you can get around these challenges. You just have to research, find other people that have done the same thing, and take time and think about what you're doing. And of course, adapters, adapters, adapters. Amazon will be your best friend, and they make a bracket or an adapter for just about everything. So with that said, I'm going to go over what I'm installing in the build today. And if you are doing something similar, you can probably expect to run into a few challenges. And like I said, you have to find someone who has done the same exact setup. Similar is not the same, and it makes a big difference. All right, so the first thing is, if you saw the preview of this build when I started, I originally was going to use a Corsair AIO. Unfortunately, they had a bad run of product with the Commander units, and I made the decision to switch, and I upgraded to the Asus ROG Ryujin 2 AIO. This unit comes with some amazing Noctua fans in it. And Noctua fans are world famous for being quiet, powerful, long-lasting, not necessarily the best looking, but these fans are their solid black style. And I really do like them, but they don't meet my needs for aesthetics. So I decided to change all my fans out in the entire case from going with Corsair to Lian Li. I've never used Lian Li fans, but what drew me to Lian Li's fans are how they can be daisy chained together, which I'll show you when we start the build. And they also have some really amazing features on the fans on top of being a fantastic fan. I'm using the Uni Infinity fans. They're 120mm fans. And if you look up the specs, you'll find that the static pressure and the RPMs are outstanding. And they're easily, I would say, the top 3 or 4 fans. So I'm going to have fantastic cooling as a result. But I'm introducing a problem. The fans are available in a 3-pack or as a single pack. The 3-pack comes with its own hub, where the single pack does not. Now, why does that matter? Well, the 3-pack fans have a very proprietary style connector, as you can see. If you get a single pack fan, it comes with your typical PWM and ARGB 3-pin 5-volt connector. Now, if I use this connector, I can still daisy chain 3 fans together. That's not a problem. But I won't be able to connect that set of fans to the Lian Li hub. On the other hand, if I use the 3-pack style, I have to use the hub because this type of connector is proprietary. And I think they did that to save space on the hub, but I'm glad that they made an option. You need to be aware that sometimes little differences in whether you get a 3-pack or a 1-pack or a slightly different model number of something can make all the difference in the world when it comes to trying to make that component work in your system. Research that. Pay attention to small differences. Ask questions. There are so many resources available. It's very unlikely that the idea you want to do is 100% unique. I would like to say you can be very unique with computer building, but there are so many people doing it that honestly, it's a good thing you're not the only one, because you're going to run into some bumps when you start customizing at this level. Okay, so let's move on. The Lian Li fans also come with some screen protectors, which is really nice because these have infinity mirrors on the sides, on the front, the back. They have RGB everywhere. They're beautiful fans. They're well-performing fans. So this is going to be a really nice looking setup. And I didn't even know that people had been doing this already until I decided that's the direction I was going to go in. And I found a lot of inspiration from other people's builds, and it made me feel confident that this will work. I can make this work the way I want it to. That's what you're looking for when you are trying to do something that's out of the norm, that's unconventional. Look for other people that have already done it so you know that it's doable. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about what I'm going to do. I want to show you what I'm going to do. So let's head over to the bench. Okay, so before we start actually building, we need to make sure we have everything that we're going to need to do the job. So I've got laid out all the tools I need to complete the task. Now I'm doing things a little bit differently. So I am going to be using your traditional case fans, but only where they're not seen, because I'm getting a little bit fancy and I have stainless steel Allen head cap screws for my fans that you will see, and I have two different sizes. Okay, so you have 632 and 832. The 632 sizes are for mounting the fans to the radiator. That's what I have in my hand now. In my bin, I have the 832s, and those are for the pass-through screws that are going to mount the fans to the case. So that's going to give a nice custom look. It's a little bit of extra trouble, and it's definitely a little more expensive, but I think it's going to be well worth it. Also, I have my socket, my two bits that I need for my Allen head screws. I have my trusty 6-inch extension, of course, thermal paste. I have my trusty cordless screwdrivers. I have alcohol and lint-free paper towels. When I put the thermal paste on the processor, I may get some in a place I don't want, so I want to be prepared to clean that up. And then, of course, I have my black gloves. Use your black or any other color gloves, but use gloves when you're handling your components. So your exact tools that you need for your build might be different, but if you're doing something very similar, make sure that you've got everything in place before you start building. There's nothing more frustrating than having to stop and go to the hardware store or hunt down a tool. Take that time before you start, and then your build will go much smoother. Okay, so here we are. We're ready to install our fans. Now, I opted to leave the AIO for last, and the reason is the AIO adds a pretty good amount of weight to the top of the case. I also don't want to be twisting and turning the case in a lot of ways with the AIO installed, because although they're durable, they are still delicate in other ways, and they're expensive. Fans are cheap and they're almost bulletproof. So the best practice is do your fans first and then work on your AIO. Now, these infinity fans are very new to me. I've never installed them in a case. So there's some things that I want to point out to you so that you don't make some mistakes that I've made just playing around with them a little bit. The first thing you want to be aware of is, like all fans, you have an intake and an outflow or exhaust. So the way you can tell with any fan is the grill is always on the side the air blows to. In the old days, we had to look for the motor label, but of course, with nice fancy fans, they've done away with that, but they've stayed true to this form factor. So look for your grill, and the air is going to blow to that side. So this would be blowing air into the camera. This would be blowing air away from the camera. So you want to be thinking about that. On this case, and on most cases that have bottom fans, you want those to be intake, cool air intake fans, so that you're blowing cool air up, and that's going to help push hot air out the top. We want good thermal transmission through the case, and that's a great way to achieve that is by having a natural flow because hot air rises. Now with these fans, you can't just put the fan in and then put another fan in. You have to think ahead a little bit. If this was any other fan or a non-RGB fan, yes, I could just mount this fan. But this is a special type of fan. They daisy chain together. What I mean is this. You have pins on one side, and then you have these contact plates on the other side. And the way they're designed is so that you line them up, make sure they're facing the same way. They will not go this way. You can't do that. There's even little marks on there that help you know which way is which. And also you can see by the ends that they interlock. You simply line up the tabs and slide. Now the advantage to that is I can connect up to 4 of these fans together and have only one cable coming out. And that's wonderful. That cuts down tremendously on your cable management. It makes for a cleaner, easier install, and it makes them worth the premium price. However, when you're installing them, you have to do a little thinking ahead. So you can't just install this fan and then put your connector on. You may not be able to do that. So you may have to go ahead and install it ahead of time, which is what I'm going to do. Now, on the connector, there's another feature that's really great. So if you look at it, there's actually a lock symbol. You can slide this top cap over and lift it off. And this allows you to flip this wire to the other side so that if you need to run your wires the other way to hide them, you can do that without doing damage to the wire. That is an extremely clever feature that they put in. Very nice. And I don't know of another fan that does that. If there is one and you know it, drop a comment down below because I'd like to check out what other fan companies are doing. I imagine they're going to be copying Lian some way because they really pulled out all the stops in their engineering. So again, my fans are going to face in this orientation because I want my air blowing through this way so that it's intake. And because I'm going to run my wires to your right this way, I want to make sure that I install my cable now and it's facing this direction. Just like that. You press it down, slide it back, and that is locked in, and that is not going anywhere. And it's a very nice, clean look. And so now, you don't have to worry about the contacts on top touching anything, because if you had another fan, they would lock in here, but you have a bumper there if you don't. So you could put this right up against the side of your case and not have to worry about it touching anything. I really think they thought about a lot of detail when they made these fans. They're very impressive. So before I install, I'm going to go ahead and give them a quick little wipe down, because even though I'm wearing gloves, there's still some fingerprints on these infinity mirrors. Use a good microfiber for this. They do include some screen protectors for these fans. I opted not to put them on. Now, having these fans stacked together this way does make it a little bit more fiddly as you're trying to hold the fans and get screws started. Just take your time. You know, it's a little bit awkward for me as well. This is my, like I said, my first time using these fans. I haven't installed them on another case or anything, so you're seeing it first time that I'm doing it. So I'm going to use all 8 screws. I don't necessarily have to. There have been times when I've only had 2 screws available when I've been working on a computer. Maybe they got lost over time and I didn't have extras. Sometimes they're strange thread. These are actually not a normal thread. They're a coarse thread going into the case. So you can run into those kind of issues where maybe something catches you off guard. Whatever the reason is, you only actually need 2 screws to hold a fan and hold it well. If you're using a premium fan that has rubber bumpers for vibration and noise isolation, it's even better. Just run 2 screws in corner to corner, and that fan will stay perfectly fine for all eternity. You won't have to worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to tuck my cable in out of the way so I don't damage it. Now, the bottom fans, those are done. You can put 140 millimeter fans in the bottom of this case, and if they made these fans in the 140 size, I would have put them there, because 140s, although they're a little bit bigger, they move tremendously more air at a lower RPM, and I highly recommend them if they meet your need, your aesthetic desire, if you like the fans. Always get what you like, what you can afford, because 120s move a lot of air. In the old days, fans were 80 millimeter, little tiny things. So this is a huge improvement anyway. Okay, so now we're ready to upright the case and install the rest of our case fans. Okay, so now we're ready to install our rear exhaust fan. This is a single fan that I'm going to install, but I'm going to plug it into the hub nonetheless. Now, when you buy a 3-pack of the Lian fans, not only do you get their hub that works with their software, you also get an extra cable. And the entire purpose of that is so that if you need to connect a fan in the hub that can't be daisy chained with the other group of 3, that 4th fan can be moved to another location. So essentially, I'm going to have 2 fans on the back and a 3rd fan on this back wall that are all part of the same grouping. So the hub with the Lian Lees and the hub with the AIO, they're both necessary for different reasons, primarily because you only have so many ARGB headers on your motherboard, and I really don't want to use a splitter on those. I would rather connect to powered hubs. You can overload your headers, and I don't think that you're going to do that with just a few fans, but you can overload the voltage of the 5-volt header and possibly damage something or just not have some LEDs turn on. I'm going to avoid that entirely by using the hubs, but that introduces a problem of getting software to communicate with one another, and I will address that in a later video. So for now, let's get this fan mounted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by removing all my peelies. Again, there are a lot of them. I swear, this stuff is like a booger. Okay, Now, again, this is the side the air blows to, so that's going to go to the wall. And I am using different screws, and here they are. Nice fancy looking screws. Now, you have to remember to pay attention to where these pins are on these fans, because that's where your wiring is going to run to. So, again, my wires run in the right direction. I'm going to run it out the side and across the back of the motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and install it just like that. And I really love the attention to detail that they put into these fans. They're so nice to work with and build with. Now, I'm not doing any cable management now, but I am going to put this cable to the back end so that it's out of my way. Now, I created a complication for myself. You don't have to do this, obviously. You can use the kind of screws that you want to use. But when you start to get fancy with things, you introduce all new complications. So here I'm just putting the nut on the back side. I don't really need washers. The fans have a nice plastic solid body, so I'm not going to pull that screw through the fan. They're not just solid rubber. And the back side metal is close enough that a washer is not necessary. Again, I'm going to do this corner to corner first to get everything lined up the way I want it. Make sure it's centered up the way I like it. So you can see that it's pretty much in the center of that space there. And although there's that grating there, it will provide a little bit of restriction, but it's not going to be terrible. Oh my God, there it is again. Okay, so we can continue with the other screws. One of the things I love about doing this type of video is that I don't have to be too stiff and too informative. I get an opportunity when things like that happen to just be goofy. I mean, I'm having fun with it, and that's what this is all about. You should enjoy doing this. Okay, now I have a socket and I have the appropriate bit. And I know I'm not going to use power on this. I'm just going to be real gentle. And remember, screw with confidence. Another really nice advantage to using this type of screw is look at the angle that I'm at. I don't know if you can tell. In order for me not to hit my memory, I've got my finger back there to protect it, and I've still got a really nice hold on it. You can see my turntable is spinning around on me, and I'm not getting any slip. If that were a Phillips head, there would be problems. That's totally not why I picked them. This was completely for aesthetics, because look at that. I think that looks really nice. Now, they do make screws in different colors. There's anodized aluminum screws available that you can get in every color you can imagine: blue, purple, red, green, all the great colors. And they're not real expensive, and they really do add a nice touch of customization and, character to your build. So when you're planning your build out, take a little time to look at details like that if you care. If you don't, that's completely up to you, because doing a vanilla build is just as unique and just as much of a character statement as doing all these fancy things is. At the end of the day, all that matters is that you like your build. It doesn't matter what I think of it. If your cable management sucks and you ask me, I'll tell you. But other than that, if your computer pleases you, that's all that matters. So do not take people's criticism to heart. If you put your pictures out and ask people, what do you think? Get ready. You're opening yourself up to a lot of negative comments and a lot of people saying what you should have done and what you could have done. So don't do that. Do your research before your build. Know that you're getting good components that match up well with one another. And then you don't need to ask anyone's opinion. So now I'm going to do the two, I guess they're side. I keep thinking that's the back because of the orientation of this case. That's kind of the back. That's kind of the back. That's kind of the side. I don't know what you want to call it. In any case, you're not going to see as well because of the angle, but it's the same idea. I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. I'm going to prep my fans. I'm going to daisy chain them together. I already see a place where I think I want to run my wiring out. And you know, I'm going to try to keep everything hidden as much as I possibly can. As a matter of fact, I'm going to move that fan up some because after looking at it, I think, you know, I can hide that a little bit better. And, you know, there are times when you install something and you look back from a distance and it doesn't look quite right. We'll go ahead and fix it. There's only one thing that is kind of an annoying pain to change, and that's when you mount a cooler to your CPU because you've put thermal paste on there. But don't let that stop you from making a change of some kind. Never, never, never let laziness dictate the quality of your build. It's an easy thing to do, especially if you're tired, but I just caution against that. You know, take a little extra time and you'll always be happy with the end result. So now that little bit of change pretty much hid the top wire there. And I really like that a lot better. So on the back here, you can see that these slots, they kind of come to a point. And I don't think it's by accident that just clearing this slot bottom made this perfectly line up where I wanted it. And the top of this slot lines up perfectly with the bottom of this one. I don't think that's accidental. Everything about this case seems to be on purpose, for a purpose. So, you know, it's really a good case to build in. Okay. That looks much nicer. So now let's get these other fans going. These are also going to be intake fans. So I'm going to have 2 in the bottom, 2 in the side. That's 4. And then I'm going to have 4 exhaust fans, 3 in the AIO and 1 on the back wall. So I'm going to have a more or less positive pressure because there's restriction on the rear exhaust fan. There will definitely be restriction because of the radiator. And the bottom and the side fans are going to be more free flowing, and that's what you want. You want positive pressure because what that does is it pushes heat out from any place it can get out, as well as it keeps dust out of your computer. And it really does. That's not just, you know, oh, that's nerd talk. No, it really is true. And, you know, it's a fantastic principle. I'm just putting these in some places to get them out of my way, really, for now. I may move these when I do my cable management. Okay. These screws are a little bit longer than I want. The reason for that is the hardware store was out of the size I really wanted. But these won't be in the way. They're just short enough that they won't be a problem. You know, if you have a tempered glass panel on the right hand side, or, you know, the off side, you really want to make sure, if you're using custom length screws, that you're not going to put that panel on and bust your glass. If it's a metal panel, obviously you don't want it bowing out. So, you know, just kind of sight down it. Make sure it's clearing everything. I've been seeing a lot of pictures online lately of people having broken tempered glass panels from putting a vertical mount GPU and it's too close, and they close their panel door and it pops their glass, and that sucks. So, you know, don't do that. All right, so before I put the other screws in, I am going to go ahead and just snug these up a little bit. I don't want them to keep sliding around on me. Ooh. Okay. When you're building on a computer, you know, at least for me, I get kind of lost in the moment. I forget where I'm at. I forget about things that are bothering me, and I forget about politics and world problems and the weather and how many children I have, and, you know, all these different things. You know, it's a great escape. You know, I really encourage you to make sure that building a computer is always enjoyable. If you're not feeling it, then don't force it. You know, you're gonna make substantially more mistakes if you're not in a good headspace to build, because you're gonna run into some weird things when you're building. Like right there, that was a bad nut. I could have tried to force it on, and it might have stripped the entire screw out, and then I would have had a really bad time because I don't have extras. I cleaned out the hardware store. So, you know, make sure that you can enjoy this process. I mean, Again, just like the bottom, and not the rear, but the bottom, you could put 140s on the sides. For some reason, I guess they decided not to make the case a little bit wider to accommodate the 140s in the rear. I had emailed Hyte and asked some questions of the engineers about some of the design elements and things, and you know, I was really surprised by how much thought they did put into everything. So, like I said, everything is done on purpose for a purpose. Okay, so there we have our fans installed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get set up to install the AIO, and that's just going to involve me getting my tools reorganized and more prepared. And so I will do that and be right back. Okay, it's Future Gibby here, and I just had to pop in and say this video is f***ing long. Oh my God. So listen, I'm going to spare you sitting through an hour and a half or more of my nonsense. We're going to break this video into two parts. First part, the fans. The second part is going to be the AIO. And I did that because if you're just interested in the AIO, I want you to be able to just jump right to that. If you only need the fans part, you can just watch that. And I realized I had a choice. I could either be fast or I could be thorough. I couldn't be both. And I'm committed to being thorough. So thank you for your patience. Thank you so much for being a subscriber. And thank you for being a viewer. I appreciate just having views. And I hope you enjoy the videos.